Chris, don't forget to cover that logo up. There's some black gaff tape in the bag.
Oh yeah, I found the gaff tape, Jordan. It's not black. Discreet. No one's gonna look twice. Welcome back, DPReview TV viewers. Chris Nichols here from DPReview TV, and as you can see, we've got a stunning landscape behind us. We're shooting here in the wintertime in Alberta, but we drove up to the mountains, and we've got a very neat camera here because today we're playing with the brand new Olympus OM-D E-M1X. Now, we are actually shooting a full production camera, but it is before the press launch, so I've got this pink tape on here, so it's very discreet. Nobody's gonna notice that I've got a new camera that they're not supposed to know about. I'm out here shooting landscapes, but I do not have a tripod with me. So that's gonna be our challenge today because this camera promises freedom. That's Olympus's tagline. Let's see if it's true. Jordan's asked me to point out the following. He's also shooting today's video on an E-M1X. He has the optical stabilizer turned on, no digital, shooting on the 12-100 f4. We're doing cinema 4K, and we're going directly into the camera's preamp. So you'll get a good, basis of knowledge for what the video looks like today, as well as how it sounds. Oh man, I love this snow. I'm gonna do like super artsy snow artsy shit. It's gonna be awesome. Just out here taking the path most traveled, where all the influencers come. They've just like carved their own space in the snow. All right, first thing is the grip, and this is really quite a departure from what they did on the EM1 Mark II. If you remember, that camera actually had a very small, compact looking body with a chunky looking grip. Well, this overall has a much larger, more professional kind of look here. Now, the incorporated vertical grip houses 2 batteries, and I find that it feels very comfortable to hold vertically. When I go to the standard grip here, I feel that it's a little bit larger for my hands. I'm just kind of holding on there. It's not bad, it's just not ideal for me, but I'm sure people with larger hands are gonna love it. The other big change that I like here is that this camera is actually having a dedicated ISO button, exposure compensation, an autofocusing joystick, which the EM1 Mark II really could have used, dedicated white balance button. And keep in mind that all those buttons are very customizable, so you can change this around as you see fit. The mode dial as well. Now, obviously Olympus have always had that, but now I've got 4 custom modes hardwired on the mode dial, and I've also got the bulb setting there. We've also got 4 buttons on the front here you can customize, and even though they share similar positions when you're doing the vertical grip or the horizontal grip, you can customize those to 4 separate functions. So I think you guys get the idea. This camera is very customizable. So Live ND is one of the features I really wanted to try on the M1X because this is all about getting rid of the tripod and also getting rid of filters. And basically what it's doing is compositing multiple images together to create that motion effect. I mean, this is something that we have done in the past using a tripod when you don't have ND filters with you. But the nice thing here is, of course, it composites it all in camera. I can get up to 5-stop equivalent ND. So for this kind of light right now at 200 ISO, I'm shooting around a second. I'm happy with the result that I'm getting there. It gives you a preview showing you what it should look like at this slower shutter speed. And that's probably the most fun part. As I'm looking at my photograph, I can see what I'm gonna get before I have to set up NDs or tripods and take test shots. Here I just see it right in the live view. So it's fun, it's convenient, it's easy to do. And so the only quirk that I did find is that although the preview is really awesome, it is very slow. So if I move the camera around, I lose my frame. It's like being on an acid trip or something. It's crazy. So I just customized one of my front custom buttons to turn Live ND on and off, turn it off, get my composition of frame, turn it on, look at my preview, and take the shots. I would still say definitely a tripod is best for the sharpest results, but handheld, very impressive. All right, so found a nice location to test high-res mode. Now, of course, that's not new. The EM5 Mark II had it, the EM1 Mark II has it. Now, up to this point, what a lot of cameras have done is taken multiple images, sometimes 4 with pixel shift, or in case of Olympus, it would do 8 shots and it would composite it together, but this is doing something more akin to what smartphones are doing now. So we're getting 16 composite images here, but I have to say the process is very smooth. It does take some time to process it afterwards, but from what I understand, the image stabilizer is working part-time during that process, part-time it's not, takes into account your hand movement, eliminates any sort of weird, strange effects. And so all in all, it's a very complicated procedure, but it works very, very well. Look at those poor suckers relying on tripods, hey? It's so sad. I don't have to use one. I used to be one of those. And I guess I will be again when I have to give this camera back. All right, so a little bit of change in scenery. Obviously, we're not in the mountains anymore, but if you look way off in the distance, there they are, that's where we were. But now we're back in the prairies. We're out here on the farm to test a new feature on the E-M1X, and that is a new autofocusing system designed to pick up planes, trains, and automobiles, just like the movie, all right? Now, why this is really interesting is because this is where Olympus is using this new technology that we've also seen now with the Sony a6400, but in a different way, using machine learning techniques to basically train the camera to do a better job focusing on, in this case, vehicles. Now, first off, Kerry Rose at DPReview did a really good test with this with motocross, and he really enjoyed the results he got. So we are going to refer to that. But I thought, why miss out on the fun? I want to give it a try for myself. So we have some interesting vehicles around here. We're going to see if it can pick up Canadian planes, trains, and automobiles. Okay, so yes, I realize the Cessna's not flying through the air right now. It's sitting in a hangar. I mean, the landing strip is frozen over with ice and snow, but there are still some things that we can glean from this. We've got a very busy environment, and yet the camera is absolutely detecting the shape of the plane and tracking it, to the exception of other objects here. And it also has some logic to where it wants to focus. Looks like it's going for the cockpit quite a bit, you know, getting the pilots in focus. Okay, so as you can see, we've lowered the bar even further, but you know, vintage collectible toy trains, aces. So it's detecting even this old vintage Metropolitan, but this car is like literally frozen in place. Okay, so I know these tests so far have been pretty ridiculous, but we do have a moving vehicle here, and this is classic Canadiana. We've got a 70s Ski-Doo, and you know what? The tracking is picking up beautifully. All right, so Jordan has to film. I have to take pictures of this happening, so this is Jenny, Jordan's cousin. Thank you so much for helping us out, Jenny. And she's gonna be riding this Ski-Doo. I was really excited to play with the autofocusing capabilities of the E-M1X because we're getting into an era now where the cameras can make some very smart decisions for you. So when it comes to planes, trains, and automobiles, first off, I was very surprised at how effective the Motorsports mode was at picking up anything. I mean, I guess apparently if it's got skis or tracks or wheels and an engine, the camera is going to do a good job with it. And the whole point of this is so that I don't have to chase around a focusing point with my joystick or set up an appropriate zone or try to keep things in a certain part of the frame. The camera should basically just make that decision intelligently for me, and it does a good job. My only issues, though, are when it comes to other things. I mean, yeah, planes, trains, and automobiles are great, but first off, I have to set that in the menu, and there's no quick way to do it. I actually have to go in the menu every time and change between that. That's a bit of an inconvenience, but they could fix that. But what about when I want to take pictures of my kids? What about when I take pictures of journalistic activities or weddings or all the other kinds of stuff we shoot? In that regard, this camera's not quite going to do what I want it to do. I'm back to using zones with continuous autofocus to track things back button. And honestly, when we shot kids, like, you know, Jordan and I took pictures of our families and our children playing around and stuff, and we were both quite disappointed. We actually had a lot of shots just out of focus. I actually had really good success rate with Olympus's face detect system, as you can see here. My only issue is it's a little bit cumbersome in that, like many other manufacturers, it overrides the entire system. I can't really decide what face I want to focus on. It doesn't really respect my initial autofocusing point or zone. And if I want to focus on something that's not a face, I have to go in, turn it off, and then refocus. Now, another autofocus technology that's supposed to really simplify things is a tracking system. You know, basically where you put a box on your subject, you touch your focus, and then it remembers that subject and follows it. And that does work really well on cameras like Nikon with their 3D. It also works amazingly well on the brand new Sony a6400. I really did love that system. Here, unfortunately, it looks like it's still the same as the Olympus E-M1 Mark II, and honestly, we were never really blown away by that. When we reviewed that camera, we had a lot of issues. So lock-on tracking is a great idea. Some manufacturers are doing it very well now, but this is still not up to the task. My go-to if I was ever going to put a camera through a water torture test would be Pentax, but Olympus is also an incredibly rugged, well-sealed camera system. But we soaked this camera really good under lots of water, and I'm confident that it's going to work great. So all in all, if you do want something rugged for the outdoors or serious situations, I would say this camera can handle it. I do have an issue here with the M1X, and that's because for such an expensive camera, it actually doesn't have very sophisticated panels. Now, the back panel's fine. It does fully articulate. I like the touchscreen interface. It's actually not bad in bright light, but that's very easy to find on the market now. The EVF, though, is quite low resolution, okay? I mean, 2.36 million dots. It's way lower than what we find on a Panasonic G9, for example, at 3.6 million dots. And here, we've got amazing optics inside the viewfinder. The magnification is brilliant. But unfortunately, it only serves to magnify how relatively poor the resolution is of the EVF that's in front of it. It's like you can see the pixels. The EVF does refresh up to 120 frames per second. Very useful if you're shooting action in sports to track it properly. So I like that. But in the end, when you look at this resolution, especially compared to the price point, it's just not comparing very favorably. I really enjoyed using the stabilizer on the E-M1X, especially out in the mountains, but I thought I'd do a test in here. So this is what I tried. I'm shooting the 12-100 at 50 millimeters. It is a stabilized lens. And then I shot the 40-150 at 50 millimeters. It is not a stabilized lens. So I'm just relying on the body. Now, with the non-stabilized 40-150, I could get about 1/4 of a second, but I was starting to see some motion blur. With the 12-100, I was getting that more around 1/2 a second to even a full second. It was pretty impressive. So it's pretty much in line with what Olympus was saying is the improvement on this camera when using those lenses. All in all, very nice to use, very stable, and it does mean I can get some nice shots at slower shutter speeds without having to crank up my ISO. And so, although I love the stabilizer, it still doesn't address one of the main issues with Micro Four Thirds, and that is shooting action and sports where you need faster shutter speeds in lower light situations where you have to crank the ISO higher. All right, it's final conclusion time from the warmth of the greenhouse, which is a really nice change. And I want to talk about what Olympus is doing here with Micro Four Thirds, because I think it's very commendable, the technology they're using to try to help their system. We are talking about a small sensor. There's limitations for resolution. There's limitations for low light performance and capability. And I think what Olympus is doing is bringing some very interesting technology to the table. So Olympus is one of the early adopters here of using machine learning to teach this camera how to detect objects, how to track them properly, and really for you, the photographer, how to find them without you having to think about where they are in the frame or what mode you're using. And that's a very big benefit. We did, however, just test the Sony a6400, and I think they've done a better job at making an autofocusing system that works amazing, but in a far more universal way. We still get a very good hit rate, don't get me wrong, but it's still not where I think I want it to go. I think the stuff that's really exciting though about this camera is really the technology going forward in the future. Features like the Live ND were fun and easy to use, and that also goes along with things like the high-res handheld mode, stuff that smartphones are bringing in. This idea of compositing images together and getting the best results is also going to translate as we get into these larger, more complicated cameras, and there's a lot of potential there. You know, I actually had the most fun I've ever had with the Olympus body here. The Olympus OM-D E-M1X is capable. I love the way it handles. The menus are a little bit better. But it is a very expensive camera, and that's where I have a hard time finding where this camera's niche is going to be. Who's going to buy this camera? You'd have to really be into the Live ND, the high-res handheld modes, the stabilizing quality. Really, you'd have to be the kind of person who really hates tripods. For video, we haven't talked about that. I know you're wondering, like, well, where's Jordan in this whole video? We're already at the conclusion and we're missing him. And yeah, I'm sorry, you're not going to get him. You're stuck with me here. Jordan's going to do a separate video talk about this camera, especially comparing it to some of the other cameras on the market, because it is worth doing. There's a lot here to talk about. Suffice to say, though, as a vlogging camera, this is going to be a huge vlogging camera. And by huge, I mean like physically it's huge. But leave your comments below. Let us know what you think. Don't forget to subscribe. Check out our Instagram and Twitter. And I'm really excited for the future. I want to see all of this technology, but in a smaller, more compact Micro Four Thirds. That'd be right up my alley. Hopefully we'll be reviewing that soon.